So just if you can kind of share a little bit around the theme or themes that you're working with for this next bunch of classes.
Right. So I'm looking at just healing in general and looking at where we might be in compartments rather than like a whole. So I'm looking at lower body and upper body and examining what is happening in the lower body and then how that moves separately, but also together with the upper body. You know, if we're thinking about hands and arms, we can move them independently of legs. But what happens when we move hands and arms in coordination with feet and legs? You know, and how our shoulders move in relation to our pelvis and our pelvis in relation to our shoulders. So somehow bringing, you know, reviewing or understanding the separate and then the whole. So maybe 2 sessions of lower body work, 2 sessions of upper body work, and then bringing it together towards the end. And the other thing I'd like to incorporate into this is Nidra for the restorative factor. So the Shavasana portion, the relaxation portion of the practice to be a Nidra.
When I think of you teaching yoga, I think of that Nidra element, that is really one of your trademarks or your unique aspects that you, without probably planning to do Nidra, receiving a class from you is an experience of Nidra in some way. So that's lovely. And what's kind of been behind this theme feeling alive for you in this moment?
It's this idea that we are in our heads a lot, you know, and in our thoughts and in our beliefs and in our emotions, oftentimes prevents us from being in our bodies. You know, so the whole concept of body awareness for me is so beautiful because most of our bodily functions happen without us even thinking about it. Right? So let's kind of turn that around and stop taking our bodies for granted and let's get in there. And what does our right big toe feel like? You know, I don't often think about my right big toe, but as I'm thinking about it now, I'm moving it and just enjoying the sensations. And it's like, oh, and what about my second toe? And it leads me to a curious place. You know, this curiosity of what the toes are doing, and then by default, what the foot's doing, because the toes are completely attached to the foot. And even though I might be moving one toe by itself, the foot has to be considered on some level because it's a part of it, whether it likes it or not. So if we carry that thought through to, you know, the rest of the body, then the ankle, and then moving up, and wow, moving that right big toe has an effect on my right ear.
Yes. And I'm thinking there was a song that you learn when you're young, like to learn the names of body parts, but like the thigh bone's connected to the
right. So how does that apply as an adult?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And so in terms of the actual practice of the class, you've already given us a really good example of what that might look and feel like within a class. Is there any other example that you would offer for people who might still feel like, oh, I'm not sure what this would really be about?
Well, it's an invitation to come into self, right? Come into the physical. And just the opportunity to be quiet with that. Because we relate the body mainly to movement. So that would be the moving aspect of the practice. And then the nidra aspect, or the relaxation part at the end, is when you have the opportunity for integration to happen, right? In that stillness.
Yeah. I'm only just realizing now that that word nidra, it makes sense to you and me. We are familiar with the term, but would you be able to define that briefly for people who may not have heard it before?
Sure. So commonly you hear it described as a yogic sleep, where you are conscious, but you're in a deep state of relaxation and rest. So it's really a treat for the nervous system.
Mm. Thank
Yeah.
you. Yeah. And it is. It definitely.
Certainly.
Yeah. Has there been anything personally that's sort of in your experience lately driven you towards this type of theme?
Recently, I've been aware of being the human doing and having a deep desire to be a human being. So I've had an enormous challenge that I'm faced with, and I'm looking at how my body is in reaction to that. So I'm quite aware of my thoughts, because it's forced me to go into my head and, you know, work it out, face the beast, face the challenge. And in order to cope, now I'm realizing, come out of your head and be in your body. And as I'm actively doing that, I'm noticing how my body is changing. So
Wow.
it's been a real act, like a deliberate, you are in a state of stress. What do you need in order to cope with this? Because the lion's not going away right now. So how am I responding to the present lion?
Yeah.
How am I protecting myself? How am I toning down that stress response? And in turn, how is my body going to heal?
Mm.
Yeah.
And I think that is the subject of stress. It's almost as if we place stress on one hand and healing on the other hand, and we almost call them duality or opposites. And then sometimes the very presence of the stress is what helps us to heal. And so one is necessary in a way for the other to a certain degree. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what would you say, I think that sort of experience would be relevant for some people who are joining the class in terms of understanding, like, how could they benefit from participating in something like this? So I don't know if you have any other sort of examples of what people might come away with if they attend the classes with you.
Well, again, to use this word deliberate. So most people, and myself included, if I attend a yoga class, I know that I come away feeling generally good, generally better, or even having a wow moment of, that was amazing. But with something like this that's targeted and focused, you know, there's an opportunity to digest that theme, and then on completion of the experience, how does that theme relate to how I'm feeling now? If we are focusing on feet, well, after that hour's practice, and all the things that I experienced on my mat, how do my feet actually feel? And then the follow-on thoughts, well, now my feet feel like this, how do my legs feel? How does the rest of my body feel? And you can, you know, connect it all like that if you choose to.
I was just reminded as you were speaking that one of the things that I most enjoyed, regardless of how the practice actually went itself, but one of the things that kept me going back to yoga was the experience of walking down the street once I had finished a yoga class, and just how different it felt to the walking that I had been doing when I had gone in.
Mm-hmm.
You've absolutely reminded me of that with that description of feet.
Mm-hmm.
And so as a sort of final comment, what would you say to someone who's perhaps thinking about it or a little bit on the fence?
I would say come along and try something and challenge yourself. Try something different. And give yourself permission to spend time, energy, and love on yourself. It may not always seem convenient, because it may be that something else is more attractive, like having breakfast or having a lie-in or something like that. But if there's any inkling of curiosity or a need to know a little bit more, words can't describe. It's the experience that it should be had.
I think this brings us to the end of our exploration of this sort of general theme of healing that will be showcased in your classes, which are happening on a Saturday morning at our Waterfront Hub. And they're being held from November 16th for 5 subsequent Saturdays, all the way through to the 14th of December. So for anyone interested in joining those classes, the sign up is open. To www.explorein.net, and the Waterfront Hub page will show Mel's Saturday morning class called Slow Flow. We encourage you to join Mel for the full 5 weeks to have this foot to head experience of yourself. Mel, thank you so much for your time. I love to spend time with you in any capacity. I really enjoy speaking with you. I am grateful for how contemplative and how thoughtful and how mindful you are, and honest. So I appreciate you being connected with Explorein, and may you receive a lot from the classes just as much as the students as well.
Thank you, Claire.